So now we are ready. Just have a look at that against my hand. I mean, the forefinger is quite long. I like doing hands that have reasonably long fingers. I think perhaps slightly longer than what it should be, you know, but that is all to do with personal taste and whatever you think, you know, you'd like to do. So once you've got it to this stage, we start to add the clay. So first of all, actually, before I add the clay, I want to put this hand into the basic pose that I would like it to be in. So I would like it to be a relaxed hand like the other one. So for that, make sure when you do it, if you're doing it according to my armature, make sure that you're I mean, it's not a disaster if you don't, because believe me, I've got it wrong many times, but generally make sure that the square tubes are bent inwards, obviously, because that's where your shoulders would be, and you want your thumbs to be on the side of where your shoulders are, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? Pointing inwards. The thumbs are the thumbs are close to the body. That's what I'm trying to say, I think. So, you know, these are things that I do sometimes forget. Of course, if you do, don't worry. Just flip your, you know, where it's bent at a right angle one way, just turn it the other way and you'll be okay. So, what I'm going to do now is try to get this hand into the similar pose as the other one that we finished doing, well, that I've basically finished doing, and I'm doing a relaxed pose. So so I sort of get it into the basic shape. I do you know, move it around, but just get it into kind of the basic shape. So I would bring the thumb forward because you want a sort of relaxed pose on the thumb. The fingers are just as you would when they are resting, they are slightly bent. Sorry, it's always more difficult to do things in the camera. So it's just a slight bend on the fingers. And then there's the second joint, which you just want to bend slightly as well. Right, so you've got the basic pose that you're going to go for. Also bent a little bit at the knuckles. So for that I use these long nose pliers. They're very useful. I think you get them for jewellery. Right, so although obviously I've got the basic pose, it will get moved out of the pose because it's just the nature of having to work on each finger. You do need to pull it out of the pose again, but you just start off where you kind of want it to be. So then I just take a small sliver of the clay again, and I start building on each finger. So we'll start with the thumb. So you just put your sausage of clay, squish it on, bend it over so it joins at the back. Now again, as I said before, what you can do with your clay is take the amount that you're going to use for the hands, mix a slight bit more of the Mix Quick into that particular mixture. So make sure you don't use, you know, very, very high quantities of Mix Quick. I've got this, I'm just trying to imagine, I've got this piece of clay. With this piece of clay, if you got this amount, I would mix maybe that much Mix Quick into that amount of clay. It's just enough to make your clay more sticky. This is only if you need it. The clay might be sticky enough. This particular batch is sticky enough. If you find that it's not, when you squeeze the clay, when you pull your fingers away, if it's slightly sticky as it pulls away, that's a good consistency for hands, because what it will do is it will grab hold of your armature easier than a very stiff clay would. And you want it to be able to grab hold easily so that you can sort of mold it over the wires that, you know, the clay that you've already done. Just makes life a lot easier. So you just build up just little bit pieces of clay. That's how I do it, just a little piece of clay. You know there's a thumb pad here, so I just put on a piece of clay for the pad. This is why I find that it's very difficult for me to build a hand that doesn't have an armature, because I find that the solidness of the armature just helps me so much. But I think that's just to do with experience. I don't have a lot of experience on building hands that don't have an armature, and I'm sure for people who don't have built hands for years without an armature, it must be really easy for them. And obviously it's just to do with experience on what you're used to. So for me this just is easier. The little bits, dark bits underneath, that's just the marker pen that I used. You could make sure that you don't have it by just either not marking it out and just cutting the shape of the mesh, or you could wipe it off afterwards with some mineral spirit. It won't shine through once all the clay is on anyway, so it doesn't matter. So again, I'm just putting extra clay on the thumb just to build up the pad at the back. It's quite good to have a reference picture of a hand in front of you, or use your own hand so you can keep referring to it. So I'm just adding a bit of clay for the thumb pad. Now the thumb goes in. Let me see if I can show my thumb. You sort of have the fatness of the pad, and then you have a sort of indentation here. So just think about that while you're sculpting it. And then obviously making it taper off at the tip. Always tapering off at the tip always looks more feminine, more dainty. But as I've said many times, I have a lot to learn about hands, so I'm definitely not the master of dainty hands. But I'm working on it.